Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Amy and I love talking about plants. I hope you're all doing well given the current crazy times that we're living in. Today I thought I would share with you my top 5 easiest houseplants to care for that I have in my collection anyways. These are good plants to start off with. They're easy to figure out, easy to care for, and will give you a sense of satisfaction going forward that you may need to continue your plant obsession and move on to other species. I'm going to go through each of these plants in 3 different categories: water, light and pests, because I think these are kind of the main 3 things that we have to think about when we're starting out. I'm going to go through each of these species or genuses so that you can understand what each of them may require in your care. I just want to point out first that any plant in general, or any houseplant you're trying to grow, it is very useful to try and research where this plant grows in the wild. What kind of environments are they used to? What kind of situations are they adapted for? And that goes in terms of water and light and all of these things, because if you try to recreate these environments in your home, your plants will grow as they're meant to. So the first plant that I have today is the snake plant, or Sansevieria, which has now been reclassified into the genus Dracaena, but I'm sure they're more commonly known still as Sansevieria or snake plants. These plants are native to Africa, so if you're thinking about it, these plants are used to high light, high sun. They're used to dry climates. It also helps to think about the thickness of the leaves. These are very thick and hardy leaves. They hold onto water quite well. They are kind of like succulents in a way because their leaves are thick. They are flowering plants, but they don't generally flower indoors. It's probably because we don't have high enough light or warm enough conditions for them to. I'm sure if you provided them with that, they would flower. I have heard of some people's snake plants flowering in their homes, but the reason these are so easy to care for is because they are very adaptable. They can deal with lower light conditions. They can deal with not a lot of watering. They're very hardy plants. However, that said, no plant likes no light. So think about that when you're putting this plant in your home. If you really need a plant in a corner that has low light, but it has some light, they will grow here, but they will thrive in higher light conditions. They'll do better closer to a window. So for water these plants very sparingly. Anytime you water a plant, you have to think about the light that it is getting. If it's beside a south-facing window, which provides a lot of light, you will need to water more so than if they are pulled back from a window or they're in a low light condition. So I have this plant in a north-facing window in my bedroom, as you may have seen my houseplant tour, and it's not getting a huge amount of light, but that's because I still want plants on that window. So I don't water this plant a lot. I probably water it once every month or so, and it's happy with that, and it's growing. This is a new pup that it grew that's pretty recent. There's another one growing in here. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, so that's water. Light-wise, it's in a north-facing window, as I said, so I'm not giving this plant a huge amount of light, but yet it's still growing. Pest-wise, I haven't had any pests with this yet. I've had it about a year now. I don't hear of snake plants being particularly susceptible to pests, and that's the snake plant. I'll also say that there are many different cultivars and species of this plant, so if you go in that genus, you can probably find one that you'll like the look of. Some people don't. I think they're beautiful. Plant number 2 is the plant that's shown up in all of my videos. This is SarahPeggy linearis woodii. So again, this plant is native to South Africa, so it is used to drier conditions, higher light. The leaves are quite succulent. They're quite thick leaves, which even though they have thin stems, they have very thick leaves. So it acts like a succulent, again, holds on to water. You might be seeing a theme here. It is a flowering plant and it has bloomed for me quite a few times before. You can see the length of it. Their blooms kind of look like penises. You can look them up if you want, but they're beautiful. They're pink. You can get a variegated version of this plant that is kind of pink and white. It's absolutely beautiful. I haven't been able to get any, but it's definitely on the list. So for water, a lot of people find these plants tricky to figure out with water, but I think that you need to listen to the plant, which couldn't sound more hippie if I tried. These leaves, as I said, are quite firm. They're quite hard. If you pinch them on the sides, you'll feel that they are they're thick and they're firm when you press on them. However, I'll just go around touching the leaves. If the leaves feel firm, I won't water. If they start feeling soft and wrinkly and kind of bending, then it is time to water. So I basically just listen to the plant. In my home, which is a very humid home, I water this plant maybe every 1.5 to 2 weeks. It depends on the season. In winter, I water much less. So lighting, I would say, is a very important aspect for this particular plant. It does like higher light conditions. At the moment, I have it quite close to a southeast facing window, and it does very well. It grows incredibly fast, very long. I'm constantly propagating it, which is fantastic. You will notice that if you haven't given this plant enough light, the foliage will kind of stay light green. The new growth usually comes out bright green, and over time it becomes darker, like the leaves down below. However, if you're not giving it enough light, it will stay light green. So that's one way to tell. If you think you're not sure how much light it is getting, it would be good to check over time, do the leaves get darker? If they are, it's probably getting enough light and it's growing fine. If they stay green, it might want to move it to a higher light window. Pests, haven't experienced any pests so far. This is a running theme. Most of these plants don't experience pests, and it's why it makes them so easy to care for. So next up, behind me, oh God almighty, is my golden pothos, my Peperomia aureum. So, hello. This is probably one of the most common houseplants out there because it's a very, very easy grower and it's very satisfying to grow. This plant is in the Araceae family, where a lot of philodendron and monsteras are also included in that family. This plant is, I'm not sure where it's native to, but it definitely grows in tropical and subtropical regions. I think it's fairly common over the world, but I also know that it is considered an invasive species in some countries because it propagates really easy, it spreads very easy, it can overtake other plants when it's not native in that ecosystem. That is also another reason why it's such an easy plant to grow in your home. It is a vining or climbing plant, so I do have this one on a moss pole, which if you can see here, so it basically climbs up here. And I have found that with trailing plants, if you give them a pole or something to climb up, the leaves do get bigger at the top. As you can see, oh my God, I nearly knocked another plant. These leaves are very big compared to some down here. If you want bigger leaves, give it something to climb up. In terms of watering, I again will listen to the plant in a way. If the leaves start to droop, at the moment these leaves are kind of sticking out, they're good and lifted. This plant has been watered in the last couple of days. So when these start to droop a little bit, they look a bit sad, that's when I'll water it. So they kind of show that they're dehydrated. But that will probably be, in my conditions, every 1.5 weeks or so. This is a pretty big pot, so if it was in a smaller pot, I'd water probably more often. In terms of light, again, very adaptable plant, similar to the snake plant. It can grow in low light conditions, but it prefers higher light. This plant does have some natural variegation on it, these yellow kind of speckles. So if you want more variegation, you generally have to give it more light. Pests, I haven't experienced any pests on this particular plant, but I do have a few of these plants, but I had another one that recently lost its life due to thrips. Any kind of fleshier plants or thinner leaf plants will be susceptible to thrips. Check your plants before you bring them home and quarantine them when you first bring them back into your house away from your other plants so that it doesn't spread if they do get some pests or have some in the soil already. Okay, so the next plant is my Anemia. So These are also in the Araceae family. There's a lot in that family. So are native to tropical and subtropical regions. I believe this plant is either native or very common in Asia. There are a million different cultivars of this plant and I just can't keep up. I actually don't even know what this species is actually called, or this cultivar. So they all come with varying patterns. I will show, I recently got another one of these because they're so easy to grow. And this, I believe, is the Silver Bay cultivar. Oh my God, it's so pretty. It is quarantined away from my other plants and has some new growth here. So you can get them with loads of different colors on the leaves. You can get pink ones, you can get red ones. They're just fantastic for their variations. I also want to say that I believe this plant and the snake plant from earlier were part of the NASA Clean Air study, which basically studied whether plants can remove certain toxins from the air. And I think they both get rid of formaldehyde and some other stuff, but that's fantastic that they can do that, but just keep in mind that doesn't mean that if you had formaldehyde in your bedroom that one plant is going to take away that. They have the ability to, but it wouldn't really happen unless you had a literal forest in your bedroom, which is the goal. But anyways, just keep in mind that the leaves on these Aglaonemas, the same as Dumbcanes or Dieffenbachia, do have crystals. What are they called? Calcium something crystals. I'll put it here. On the leaves, so that does make them toxic if they're ingested. So I won't be like touching my mouth with my hands, which we're all doing anyway. But yeah, keep that in mind, especially if you have dogs or cats or other pets that might try and chew them. So in terms of water, again, very sparingly. This plant isn't so obvious in terms of telling you when it needs water. It does droop slightly, but if you aren't very used to how your plant looks, you might not be able to tell. A good rule of thumb is to just wait until it's dry. Wait until it's bone dry in the pot and then give it some water. But they can go long periods without water as well. It's not a super big issue. Light, again, varies. The darker the leaves on your plant, the less light it will require, and that's because the green in the leaves is chlorophyll, and that is basically how the plant uses sunlight to make energy and sugars and things that it needs to survive. So this particular version will require less light than this version because it has lighter patches on the leaves. So I mean, they'd probably be grown the same, but I'm just making a point that the darker leaves, the less light it requires. So this plant will grow in multiple different scenarios in terms of light. I do have mine close to my southeast facing window because again, I want it to grow faster. It has a new leaf even growing here. It's more satisfying to me that way, but it can grow in lower light conditions. So keep that in mind. It's a very adaptable plant. In terms of pests, again, haven't experienced any pests on this plant, partly why I love it so much. That's not to say yours won't get any, but that's my experience of it so far. So that's the Aglaonema. So the last one is a very large genus, and I actually have quite a few of them. The first of which, oh God, I watered this recently, it's very heavy. Oh my God, this is so cool. I love this plant. Is Peperomia. So this is a Peperomia obtusifolia variegata. It's fantastical. You can see all of these sticks are actually its flowers. So they're technically called inflorescence. They don't really look like flowers at all. So that's basically this plant, which is just fabulous. So I'll show you my other varieties, which are easier to hold. So my other varieties are both Peperomia caperata or caperata or whatever. This is the Peperomia caperata rosso, and this is the Peperomia caperata Luna Red. So they both look quite different, but they're all in the same family. There's like over 1,000 species in this genus. So, and they all vary a lot. So there are kind of the more succulent types of Peperomia, and then there's other ones with thinner leaves. So there's really a huge variety with these plants. Again, they grow in tropical or subtropical regions, but vary throughout the world. I think they're most common in South America, and they come come in all types of colors. This very dark color with pink stems. The Rosso has pink underneath and green on top. With water, again, water very sparingly. It does depend on how succulent they are. I would consider that the Rosso has much more thicker leaves than this version, even though they're the same species. So I will water this one slightly more often than the Rosso. So it depends on the plant. Again, the leaves will feel quite soft and kind of limp when they are dehydrated, and I will water them when they get to that point, if maybe just a little bit before, but when you're getting to know your plant, it's fine. In terms of light, this has quite darker foliage, so it doesn't require a lot of light, but I do, again, give it more light than it needs just to help it grow a bit better. However, I will note that with some Peperomia that have quite distinct patterns on them, like the Argyria, the watermelon Peperomia, or I also have a Peperomia Napoli Lights, I find that the higher light you put them in, the contrast on the colouring kind of fades a bit and they don't look as beautiful. So keep that in mind, watch out for it. If you find that they're kind of bleaching or fading a bit, pull them back a bit from the window. So in terms of pests, the only experience I've had with pests on any Peperomia was my Peperomia Napoli Lights, which you may have seen on my houseplant tour. It's now dead. Well, yeah, I threw it out. I have propagations of it, so it's not a big deal, but it had a lot of thrips. So I pretty sure that the thrips actually came from another plant, so I'm not going to like blame this species on it. Just keep that in mind, but it's the same as goes for any plant. If you put a plant near a plant that has a pest, it's probably going to get that pest. Other than that though, I haven't bought any Peperomia that ended up having any pest issues when it came into my home. So that's it, that's Peperomia. So guys, those were my top 5 easiest to care for houseplants that I have in my collection, in my opinion. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're all keeping safe and sane, both physically and mentally. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.